Hi guys, my name's Curtis Haines, and I'm here to talk about Permatex gasket makers and flange sealants. We want you to get the best possible results when using our products, so I'm here to explain 3 different types of gasket makers and flange sealants so that you can decide which is the right type for your job. But first, let's talk about when and why you'd use a gasket maker or flange sealant. The first time a vehicle might see a gasket maker or flange sealant is at the factory. Automakers use them when they build their vehicles. Then, when the vehicle needs service, they can be used to match what's used at the factory. But most of the time, you'll see them being used to replace a traditional gasket. Using a gasket maker instead of a conventional gasket can save a whole lot of time and money. And with the gasket makers on hand, you don't have to run out to the parts store or wait around for a gasket delivery. Permatex gasket makers and flange sealants have tremendous reliability. They can eliminate leak paths that traditional gaskets can't. And they're super resistant to vibration, fluids, and temperature cycles. Permatex has 3 types of gasket makers and flange sealants: RTV silicones, anaerobics, and solvent-based gaskets. And each of the 3 types is available in specialized formulas to match specific requirements. We'll explain the specific formulas in our other videos. But let's first look at when to choose an RTV silicone gasket maker versus an anaerobic or solvent-based formula. The one that's right for your job depends on the type of assemblies being sealed, the kinds of fluids you're sealing against, and the operating pressures and temperatures you're dealing with. Other factors include gap tolerance, compatibility with sensors, or the need to match what the OEM used. The final factor for selecting the right gasket type is time. How much time do you have before the vehicle needs to be back on the road? When you need an immediate repair and you need to be able to fill gaps, Permatex The Right Stuff is your choice. Permatex The Right Stuff is an elastomeric RTV silicone gasket maker that lets you simply apply, torque, and go. RTV stands for room temperature vulcanization. This is a process where the liquid silicone cures to a tough silicone seal. In addition to a fast turnaround, The Right Stuff is the best gasket maker for filling gaps, and it gives you maximum resistance to oil, ATF, and other fluids. And it protects against blowouts. There really isn't any other gasket maker that can do what The Right Stuff does. Now, if you've got 24 hours of cure time before the vehicle has to be back into service, you can choose one of our conventional or Ultra Series RTV gasket makers. Permatex RTV gasket makers don't just replace traditional gaskets at a lower cost. They seal gaps better, and they're more flexible, so they last longer than traditional gaskets. Our RTV gasket makers are so versatile, rather than listing all the places you can use them, it may be easier to tell you a few places that you don't want to use them. You don't want to use an RTV gasket maker in any application that comes into contact with gasoline. And never use any gasket maker to replace a head gasket or install a head gasket. When you're doing a head gasket, always follow the manufacturer's instructions. And if applicable, use one of our Permatex gasket sealants or dressings. Okay, so that's our RTVs. Next up are our Permatex anaerobic gasket makers and sealants. Anaerobics refers to the fact that these products cure in the absence of air and the presence of active metals. The curing process only begins after you put the assembly back together. You'll find anaerobics are used extensively on cars from 2002 and up, and diesel trucks have been using anaerobic sealants for over 30 years. Permatex anaerobic gasket makers and sealants are intended to seal assemblies that have 2 close-fitting machined metal surfaces. They're also used when the assembled parts have to meet an exact size or dimension to keep tolerances within spec. And of course, you should use them for any application where the OEM calls for an anaerobic sealant. Anaerobics are a good choice if you think you'll need to disassemble the components in the near future. But remember, like RTVs, anaerobics should not be used to replace or to seal a head gasket. Our third type of gasket makers and sealants are solvent-based formulas. These are recommended for situations where your seal may be frequently exposed to gasoline. This happens a lot with motorcycles, power sports, and small engines. You'll also see sealed components exposed to gasoline on vintage and antique vehicles. So those are our 3 types of gasket makers and sealants: RTVs, anaerobics, and solvent-based. But remember, each type is offered in more than one formula. To learn which specific formula is right for your job, you can watch our other videos or check out our website at Permatex.com. I'm Curtis Haines from Permatex, and thanks for watching.